negotiated and a deal will be signed tonight, or the U.S. will blow up every single power plant and bridge and more in Iran? Your take, Mike.
Yeah, look, the Iranians talking tough throughout this conflict really gives a lot of Monty Python vibes here. Like, that's merely a flesh wound. Look, the U.S. has taken out over 13,000 targets to the 17 that Iran has taken out. And you need to keep in mind, over this ceasefire, the U.S. has been able to replenish, refuel, rearm, and pick up a host of other targets. So all these gunboats coming out and running, causing trouble, all of these officials running back and forth negotiating. I think the saber rattling from Iran is simply to try to get the best terms possible, as with President Trump saying, hey, I'm going to blow up everything in your entire country. I don't think President Trump wants to do that. I think the end game here is to get an Iran that participates in the Abraham Accords, an Iran that is not a terrorist state and a threat to the rest of the region, an Iran that, with no sanctions, where they're pumping out 8 million barrels of oil a day, in a region that is prosperous and safe and not funding the terrorism across the world. And, it's not as if these Ayatollahs are as ideological as the press makes them out to be. They have billions of dollars in Dubai and numbered accounts. They own townhomes in London. They understand the value of money, and I think they want money. They want to stay alive. And I think the president knows that, and we're a lot closer to the deal. Stock market certainly thinks like it than what we're hearing in the media. So hopefully this is the end of it. If not, it'll be very easy for Iran or for the U.S. to turn up pressure to 11 out of 10 very quickly.
Yeah, something's going to happen, right, Elizabeth? I mean, the chew as well. I have a report from Jeffrey from Wells Fargo this morning. Listen to this. The analyst there says the biggest highlight from week one of earnings was the bank's private credit disclosure. And even with the global financial crisis default cycle, we estimate the exposure is too small to be systematic. You saw all those disclosures last week from the banks. Looks like it was a big nothing.
Well, Maria, the problem with private credit is a lot of these companies that run these funds are the ones directly involved in financing the data center and the AI infrastructure build out. And I'd say the underwriting for most of these funds is as good as you could possibly get. That doesn't mean there aren't bad loans and there won't be a wave of defaults. But, if Blue Owl is your cornerstone for financing your data centers, for a lot of these hyperscalers, it's going to be really hard for Blue Owl, Apollo, Blackstone to go out and get checks in the moment, which could affect earnings and the market in that matter, where data centers don't get built at the speed with which the market expects. That's what I'm watching closely, not necessarily these defaults, because again, it's the big banks don't own the debt. The asset managers don't own the debt. They own them in funds, and so it can hurt their fee income. But I think the only systemic issue here, and it's probably small, is the financing of these data center build-outs.
Great point. And we've got breaking news coming up in the program when I speak with the president, the new president of... You're right. We're talking about AI all morning this morning as we kick off our AI week. Michael Lee, jump in here on the Kevin Warsh situation as interest rates sit at 4.2% on the 10-year.
Yeah, so Kevin Warsh has made it clear that he wants lower interest rates, but at the same time, less Fed involvement in markets, which, really since Obamacare got announced and Bernanke stepped in to, juice the economy with quantitative easing, there's just been too much. You've manipulated markets. You've used the bond market to manipulate the S&P 500 to the economy. The Fed can't have this much control. I think, I don't know how it's going to play out, but in broad brushstrokes, I'd say that's a better idea to have lower short-term rates and less quantitative easing, less market manipulation. What say you?
Well, certainly. I mean, I think a longer term.
There are real threats here as well when we look at jobs. We're going to dig into that later on in the week. Your reaction?
Yeah, look, he's technically right that if goods and services can grow faster than the money supply, you shouldn't have any inflation. But that's a very difficult mismatch to play out. And then, people don't want a handout. They want to earn a living. And so you move into much deeper societal ills with this coming. But I seem to believe that it's going to affect mid-level, lower-level white-collar jobs versus the rest of the economy, right? Which that makes sense because a lot of these low-level jobs where you're not in a decision-making capacity, what value are you adding? Because you're instantly replaced with the simplest of AI tools, and that's going to cause a lot of disruption. And that sort of those people being displaced do things like, I don't know, elect Zoran Mandami. So it's a real concern this administration needs to get in front of. I think you need to stop H-1B visas almost immediately. I think you need to stop all foreign student visas for a few years because it's the entry-level job market that's going to be the most affected.
Yeah, great point. Your thoughts, Elizabeth?
Well, look, when I hear universal income in any way from any politician or any major public figure, I panic, right? That's number one. And
so, Mike Lee, your reaction. The president just said he'll fire Jay Powell if he does not step down and make room for Kevin Warsh.
Maria, in case people watching haven't followed the saga, Jerome Powell not only refused to comply with the subpoena, they got Judge Boasberg, of all the judges, to quash the subpoena and threatened Janine Powell, his attorney, that he will stay on as a Fed governor after his term ends if they don't drop the probe. I mean, if you have nothing to hide, why wouldn't you just hand over the documents they're requesting? I mean, this is unbelievable. But, who knows? This independent agency is something of a mythical creature where it exists outside the judicial, legislative, or executive branch. And we're waiting on the Supreme Court to say if he could fire Lisa Cook for clear and blatant mortgage fraud. So I don't know how this plays out. Ideally, Kevin Warsh gets confirmed this next week, but we'll see.
Yeah, I mean, the hearing is coming up tomorrow, Elizabeth. But, Tom Tillis is digging in. He's already rate hikes in Europe.
Yeah, Maria, France has got a lot of problems. Inflation is not one of them. Their problems are structural growth, innovation, research and development, and productivity. It's not inflation. France, fortunately, has one of the lowest inflation rates in the Eurozone. And then maybe because of this price shock, some people are talking about rate hikes, but that's ridiculous because if oil rebounds by the summer, there's no reason to increase interest rates.
Yeah, I totally agree. And Elizabeth, one point that the head of the IMF...
So, Maria, I just saw a headline that the AP is reporting that the Iranian officials will attend tonight. It's from the Associated Press, so who knows if that's actually accurate. But I have to imagine they will. Iran has suffered over $200 billion worth of damage. We've hit over 13,000 targets in their country, to them about 17 United States targets, and all of this with the help of the latest and greatest Russian and Chinese technology. So when you hear Iran talking tough, I said it before and I'll say it again, it does give off Monty Python vibes. Like this is merely a flesh wound. It's a bit ridiculous. And on the other side of this, are good things for Iran if they do agree to our terms. So what the Trump administration is doing is using the carrot and the stick with equal valor, because with the carrot in this situation for Iran is peace and prosperity. And I have to imagine after the shellacking and knowing that we could permanently disable all of their energy infrastructure to the point where they'll never be able to rebuild it. If they want to pursue this nuclear platform, like why not? Why not give your people a chance? Why not enrich yourselves the way that you have been for the last 49 years and just keep moving with peace so that the entire region can settle itself down?
Yeah. No, don't forget, the president has exhibited this maximum pressure campaign on Iran, Elizabeth, whether it's like actual warfare presidency under the Obama administration in 2016, she was working on behalf of Iran. She's expected to make her initial appearance before the court today. Your reaction?
Yeah, Maria, it's unbelievable who's in our country. And then all of this while the DHS isn't being funded. If you told me something like this would happen, I wouldn't believe you, but yet here we are.
Yeah, you're right. It's absolutely unbelievable. I did want to get your take on the earnings story as well, because as I read you a report earlier, one of the analysts at Wells Fargo is telling clients that all of that hoopla over the private credit situation was exposed to be a big nothing last week when we saw the earnings out of the major banks. Wells Fargo says we got the news that, in fact, it's not as big of a deal as we thought. Earnings are up So far, it's the beginning of earnings season, Mike, but your characterization of what we've seen so far from the first quarter earnings, it's going to be a buffer one for the oil companies, I'll tell you that much.
Yeah, look, so we're looking at over 13% in earnings growth this quarter, and then the next 3 quarters, 18, 19, 20, or roughly 20% for all 3 quarters. So you're seeing an earnings growth acceleration. If we can get the price of oil down and a new Fed chair, we're also going to get lower interest rates, I believe, later this year, okay, with an accelerating economy. So while stocks have run very far, very fast, I think they have a long way to go to the upside.
All right, we'll take a short break and come right back. Coming up in 10 minutes' time, I'll be talking with California Congress Mike.
Yeah, Maria, look, it's this entrepreneurial spirit. Like all these big businesses that we see on the ticker tape going across underneath us were at one point small businesses. And so this entrepreneurial spirit is what makes America America. It's the ability to go out and create something for you and your family for generations to come. Child of small business owners, small business owner myself. Let's go out there and get them.
That's right. Same. A child of small business, my dad's restaurant. All right, we're going to thank you so much for being here, Elizabeth Pipko and Mike Lee. Great show. We so appreciate